All right. Welcome, everybody, to the inaugural episode of the United Nations Rookie Summit. I'm Corbin from the US. We got Tyler from Canada and Ross from Scotland. And together, we're going to rank these rookies, starting with our quarterbacks. We might switch over to defense in the coming weeks just to spice it up a little bit. Everyone wants to get the feel for the running backs and the wide receivers, tight ends, the interesting, sexy positions. But, I think we'll kick it off with quarterbacks, hook you guys in, and maybe save running backs for last. I guess we'll let you know ahead of time. But thanks for tuning in, Roster Wars. We're happy to have you.
Definitely excited to talk some QBs to start off with. I think it's the big buzz position. I think the most interesting position on for everyone to talk about. Get started right away, jump straight in.
Yep. And before we do, Tyler, happy birthday to you, buddy.
Well, thank you.
True dedication, taking time out of your one day of the year just to talk about some quarterbacks.
It's really not a birthday though. It's a week.
Oh,
So
you're one of those guys?
Every year I celebrate it for a week. So that way nobody has to say happy belated birthday when they miss it. They can just be like, hey, it's your birthday week. So
Yeah. Well, now I judge you a little bit more, just like me trimming the chest hair. You judging me. I had ex-girlfriends who had the birthday weeks, the birthday months. That's why I'm not with them anymore.
so you're gonna dump me?
No, well, I'll give you another chance, but we'll see. You haven't been too much of a brat on your birthday, I hope. I guess I'll have to ask your wife.
No.
All right.
It's
Well,
still
let's
early.
just. What are you gonna say?
I said it's still early here. It's only noon. So
Yeah. Well, let's hop right into it. We'll talk about the big four quarterbacks today. Bryce Young will start it off. Then we got CJ Stroud, Will Levis, and Anthony Richardson. After that, we're all going to rank our quarterbacks in terms of fantasy football value. And then we're each going to give a sleeper for the people, maybe one of those later round guys, not quite on everyone's radar. So let's hop into it with Bryce Young. Big storyline coming into the combine. So I'm glad we got those measurements in before we really jumped into the discussion on him. But Bryce Young's from Alabama. He's a 21-year-old junior. He's going to be 22 in July. He stands at 6 foot. Well, I should have updated this. 6 foot and then 194 pounds is what I had. But I think he was just over 200 pounds, which was a big ticket item for some people coming into the combine. 5'10". Okay, so a little bit shorter, but heavier.
204.
5'10", 204. Okay. Well, that's a little bit better, I guess. Not the height that you're looking for, obviously, but he's a little bit heavier. So that's good news. And his hand measurement came in 9 3/4. Not so bad. Last year had a little bit of a down year. He mostly was known for his performance in 2021, where he won the Heisman, but he's a 2-year starter from Alabama. Last year, he had 64.5% completion percentage, 3,300 yards, 32 touchdowns, and 5 picks. Not much of a runner, but he can be. He's got a little bit of speed. So yeah, let's jump into the breakdown here. What do you guys think about Bryce Young? Obviously, a lot of people have him as the not quite unanimous number one pick, but for the most part, he seems to be the number one prospect, the most surefire guy coming into the class.
Yeah,
Ross, go ahead.
definitely. I think he's for a long time he's been touted as the number one. It was just accepted. Bryce Young number one, CJ Stroud who will get to sort of like the two. But it's sort of the tide's turning a wee bit. I think since we've got the measurements in, people are maybe more aware of his height deficiencies. But overall, he's just like a really good playmaker, and that's what won him the Heisman Trophy. Like it's he's on Alabama, so historically, you're in Alabama, you play with the best receivers, you play with the best offensive line. But he didn't have that this past year. I mean, the offensive line was nothing like that they usually are. He's running for his life a lot of the time, playing under pressure, and the wide receivers really let him down with some really bad drops. So his incredible season that he had could have been a lot better. And I think he's what I said, his playmaking ability. I really like him when he throws on the run. He's really accurate when he throws on the run, and I think that will help him sort of overcome his sort of height deficiencies at the next level. Is just when he's rolling out, throwing on the run, and downfield as well. And I think he can do that. Um, I don't know, Tyler. Do you like Bryce Young? Do you think his height's going to affect him at the next level?
Well, I do think that his height, I mean, you got to be special to play QB with that height. And it's hard to say if he's, I mean, Drew Brees is special. Kyler Murray, not really, Kyler Murray has his moments, but I don't know. I don't think I would take him at number one. He's not number one for me on the QBs, so that's probably saying a lot right there.
Well, I think the thing about quarterbacks is every single year it's such a polarizing position. It's so hard to scout, who's going to pan out to be the best in the class. I mean, you look back a couple of years ago with Tua and Trevor Lawrence and Justin Herbert, and for a while Justin Herbert, everyone is saying he was the best in the class. And now Trevor Lawrence, it took him a couple of years to come on, but he started to enter that conversation. Tua too, if not for these concussions, he's also a pretty darn good starter at this point, even though there's news that the Dolphins might be looking to move on from him. I think all three of those guys have been great. Last year, obviously, there was some hype, me included, hyping up Malik Willis, and he drops into the third round. We only had Kenny Pickett going 20th overall. And for the most part,
you really liked him, eh?
yeah, I was a little bit of a miss. I might have I jumped on the hype train a little bit too early, but I mean, I still think Malik Willis has, some good opportunity to make something of himself. Everybody knew he was going to be raw. He wasn't going to be, a day one starter, take over like Joe Burrow and just, take a team to the playoffs. So he needs some time to acclimate to the NFL. I mean, he was playing at Auburn and Liberty his junior and senior years. So he's got a lot to work on. But when you're talking about Bryce Young, I mean, he's been one of the best quarterbacks in college football the past 2 years. A little bit of a down year this year, but like Ross said, he didn't really have the weapons that he had back in 2021 with Mechie and Jamison Williams. And I think he played a couple of games the year before with Mac Jones when he was still there as well. So he has been surrounded by a lot of talent, and, the numbers speak for themselves. He's been able to get it done. Coaches and teammates all respect him big time as a leader. So that's one thing that I like to look for. If you're, a captain of your team, if your teammates and your coaches look up to you and you respect your leadership abilities to be able to lead a group of professional athletes who are, some of them up like 30 years older, so about 10 years older than you. I mean, that's not an easy thing to do. Just walk into the locker room and just be handed the keys to the kingdom and expect everybody to respect you. So I think he has that going on for him. And being 5'10", he's going to have to be up on his tiptoes to even be able to see over these 6'6", 6'7" offensive linemen. It can be done like Drew Brees, Kyler Murray. I mean, Drew Brees, obviously a clear-cut Hall of Famer, but Kyler Murray, he's a little bit more of a, it's hard to really put a label on him because for fantasy football purposes, Kyler Murray has been fantastic. But then if you look at the actual NFL, he's not really respected as one of the best quarterbacks in the league. But if we're talking strictly fantasy football here, I think that he's really accurate. If he's, if he has some good pieces around him, which typically most NFL teams do, if he's going to, say, the Colts or to the Texans at 1 or 2, he's going to have some decent weapons around him. The Texans obviously need a little bit of work, but they got 2 first-round picks. If you match him up with maybe a Jackson Smith-Njigba or a Quentin Johnson or a Jordan Addison, that's another weapon that you got there. So I think that, whatever situation that he lands in, he's going to be all right. I think that the one single knock that you have on him is his size. And it's been proven time and time again. Yeah, that's not ideal, but you can get it done standing at 5'10". I think that he's going to have to rely on his legs a little bit more and be a little bit more of a dual threat quarterback than he has been in college to really have, top 10 success in the NFL. So that's something that he's going to have to lean into. The one thing that does scare me is with that size, you have 300-pound linemen sacking you a couple times a game. There's the injury concern. So that's one thing that, with the size that does kind of concern me. But I think everything else, I mean, he checks all those boxes. And if he stood at 6'2", 215 pounds, I don't think we'd be having this discussion at all. So I think, talent-wise, he's got everything you need. It's just the size is the only thing that's concerning with Bryce Young.
Well, one thing I need to know is you mentioned that he's a leader and coaches love him and his teammates love him. Did they go to his birthday party?
I haven't looked into that yet.
That is something we need to know. Like when he had a birthday party, did all his teammates and coaches show up? It's just something that should be scouted, really.
Well, I don't know, man. You're the birthday boy. If he has a birthday week or month like you do, then I mean that's a big window. So I think he has more of a chance if you have the whole week. Somebody comes by and pays their respects.
Yeah. So most mocks I've seen have him going number one, right?
Hmm.
Like for quarterbacks. Although I just looked on the NFL Network today and they have Stroud at one. I don't know whose mock that was. It was just on a ticker. But I'm wondering, like, of the guy, like, say, well, if Chicago trades Fields, which I heard on Sirius is a possibility today. One of their insiders was talking about that there's still a possibility of them trading Fields and taking Young first overall. Does he fit that situation?
I don't
You
know.
know?
I don't pay attention to anything about Chicago taking a quarterback because I think that there's like less than 1% chance of that happening. I know they said they're considering it, but realistically, I think that Chicago would be taking a step back by losing Fields. I mean, you
Well,
look at
but
like the
here's what I'm getting at, because I remember when Kyler Murray was being drafted, I did a lot of reading about his height and stuff. And one thing they were always talking about is with Kyler Murray, you have to, when you have a small quarterback, it affects your offensive line, right? They're talking about you have to have an offensive line that is able to keep the D line down, so to say. And also they can't be too high. They can't be, as I remember reading about, like, they're talking how Arizona's offensive line at the time the height wasn't there. You know what I mean? They weren't as
yeah.
tall as the other offensive linemen in the league. And I was just reading how that would help Kyler Murray because now he doesn't have to worry about looking over his own offensive line. So, right?
Yeah, I hear you.
It's just one thing that I was reading about that they were saying. And I'm kind of wondering with these teams now that might draft Young, I haven't looked into their O lines, but if they, I mean, I know Chicago's O line sucks. So
Well, think about like a Russell Wilson. Like I think he's like 5'11", 6 foot or something like that. And I mean, he's made it to the Super Bowl twice. He's not bad at all. And Seattle was never known for their offensive line play when they did have that, Legion of Boom run. It was their defense, it was their running game, their receivers, and pretty much offensive line was, an afterthought. I mean, they're obviously decent, but they weren't, world beaters or like the Dallas Cowboys offensive line from a couple of years ago by any means. So, I mean, I think that teams have shown that you can get it done with a smaller quarterback, and it's not like, Bryce Young can't move around in the pocket. I thought that he is pretty good at navigating the pocket and just linking up with the receivers. And,
if Bryce Young is so good, what's Chicago doing? Why aren't they trading Fields? Like, they obviously still have questions about Fields, right?
yeah, but I think
if Young is that much better than Fields, it should be a no-brainer. Trade Fields and draft Young. You only get first overall once every while, right?
But I think right now I'd rather have Justin Fields than Bryce Young. And if you were starting a team, I would rather have Justin Fields from what I've seen compared to Bryce Young, because Justin Fields, like the Bears are just a terrible team. They're the worst in the NFL. That was, that's just how it is. And they have so many needs elsewhere. They've had receivers beaten up and injured. Darnell Mooney was out, and then they trade for Claypool, and he didn't really do much. And it's kind of tough to develop that chemistry with a quarterback when half of the season's already passed by. They have a decent running game. They need to improve the offensive line. They need to improve defense too. The Bears have a lot more needs. And so I think just trading that pick to go back and maybe get like a Will Anderson at 4 or 5 and get like a second round or a future first round pick, I think that's going to be paying more dividends, as opposed to just trading Justin Fields too and then just rolling with that pick.
Yeah, and we're talking about Bryce Young being the best in this class. It doesn't necessarily mean he's like this amazing prospect, like can't miss prospect. Like Trevor Lawrence was or something like that.
Yep.
Justin Fields was great in his class. Like I really was excited for him coming out, and his sort of college sort of draft pedigree is really high. So maybe the Bears still think about that. And yeah, Bryce Young for me is the best, or maybe 1A, 1B quarterback in this class. But I still wouldn't have confidence in him coming in straight away and being a Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, even Justin Herbert, that level of quarterback.
Yeah. Yeah, I just don't think that the size is the tell-all be-all of what's going to make a quarterback good. I think you look at the tape and there's like certain intangibles that are hard to scout for.
Yep.
It's always going to be a dice roll. And like you said, Ross, he's not a can't-miss prospect like a Joe Burrow or a Trevor Lawrence, but he has stuff that intrigues you to, lead you to believe that one day he could be the guy. So I don't know. I like Bryce Young. I think we've kind of, talked about him a little bit too much here. We can move on to the next one. Obviously the size is the biggest concern here, but I think that if, he's a couple inches taller, a little bit heavier, he would be the no-brainer first round pick. So obviously there's some concerns with him there. Proceed with caution. You might have like a little mini quarterback on your team, but you could do a lot worse. But there are some good guys surrounding him. We'll see how the NFL draft pans out. Draft capital is obviously going to determine a bit when we're talking our, rookie draft here on who's going to be the first quarterback off the board. But coming into this 2022 season, Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, everybody was clamoring over them, thinking that these are going to be the first two quarterbacks taken off the board. And then Levis and Richardson have obviously rose up draft boards pretty quickly here. But if you're talking about, the top highest pedigree guys, it was Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. So let's jump into Stroud a little bit. He's a junior coming out of Ohio State. Currently, he's 21 years old, and I think he'll be 21 throughout the season. So, a little bit younger than Bryce Young by a year. Stands 6'3", 218 pounds, 10-inch hands. He had a really good 2021 season like Bryce Young, but regressed a little bit in 2022. Jackson Smith and Jigba was out. He still had Marvin Harrison Jr. to throw to, but he was a 66.3% completion percentage, 3,688 yards for 41 touchdowns and 6 picks. Again, like Bryce Young, he's not much of a runner, but he can be. He is an athlete. And, I think that he's a little bit more of the prototypical size, but he hasn't proven as much as Bryce Young has in terms of statistics and just watching the tape. Obviously Bryce Young winning the Heisman, he had one of the better seasons of all time in college football back in 2021. So I don't know, Stroud is definitely right up there with him, but what do you want? The guy who's more of the prototypical size with, a little bit worse stats and worse tape, or do you want the guy who's the smaller guy with better stats and better tape?
I don't know where you're getting worse stats from. CJ Stroud is the king of counting stats. That's the thing. He's putting up all these numbers in Ohio State, but I get what you mean. He's done it in like a sort of a cushy situation, is what we say over here in Scotland. It's a nice, easy situation he's got behind that Ohio State offensive line, barely gets touched. Thrown to these first-round pick receivers. He's got Olave and Wilson last year. Jackson Smith and Jigba's going to be a first-round pick. And next season, we're looking at Marvin Harrison and maybe even a second Ohio State receiver going in the first round. So that's 5 first-round picks that he's thrown to. But he does have great ball placement. So it's sort of chicken or the egg thing. Is he making these great throws? Is he getting these great yardage numbers because of the great receivers, or is it because of his talent? And I think he's got good talent. I think his ball placement is unbelievable. And I think he's wowed quite a few people throwing it at the combine, because you see him compared to some other guys whose accuracy was a bit off, and not terrible, but his ball placement every single time, right exactly where it should be for the receiver to run onto it and make a play. And that's what I really love about him. And the question is about him being under pressure, thrown under pressure. We've not really seen it. And like you said, Corbin, like the athleticism, I think it's there, but he didn't utilise it enough. I think he did in the championship game against Georgia. We've seen a little bit of that. But I think he'll need to do it at the next level, just to escape the pocket a bit more, when he's under pressure a bit more. But I've got some stats for you as well to back that up. So CJ Stroud was pressured on 23% of his dropbacks. Compare that with Bryce Young, who's 33%, and Will Levis, who was 37%. So it's quite a big difference there. And that's the hole in his game for me. But I still really, really like him. And if he goes to the right situation, I think he's going to be able to perform at a good level. He reminds me a bit of sort of Jared Goff. Um, so we've got two Lions guys on the pod here. Jared Goff, I think that might sound like a backhanded compliment, but in the best way possible, he reminds me of him.
No, that is a compliment. I even had him, I swear, in my notes, I can show you. I had him compared to Jared Goff and Jimmy G. Those are my two comps. So, I
There you
mean,
go,
I
great
think,
minds.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm
And I mean,
thinking Jared Goff's comparison. But
well, they're
I'm
two Super Bowl runner-up quarterbacks. So,
yeah, well, when Jared Goff wins the MVP next year, everybody's going to be like, oh, he's
should have
great.
taken CJ Stroud one overall then. Well, I think the difference between CJ Stroud and Justin Fields is obviously Justin Fields has wheels and he is that true dual threat guy, but he's more of like people say like a running back than a quarterback. And I think that he still has, he's still raw and he doesn't have a lot of weapons around him on the Bears, Justin Fields I'm talking about. But CJ Stroud is like a true pocket passer, but he does have that athleticism to, move around in the pocket, and he's a bigger guy, so he can take hits and shed some blocks. Not quite like Ben Roethlisberger or something like that, but he's not just going to get thrown down by an arm tackle. And Justin Fields is that way as well. So I think that, that with that size, he can hang in the pocket. And even with an average to below average offensive line, he has the mobility to navigate around the pocket and still make some throws or, escape the pocket and be able to make something happen or scramble for 5-10 yards and pick up the first down. So I like Stroud a lot. And, it's just, the Ohio State quarterbacks obviously get a bad rap. They haven't had a lot of success, transitioning from college to the NFL, and Ohio State does have a pretty friendly system in place for quarterbacks. The thing that really kind of scares me about CJ Stroud is you see him have these big games like in the semifinals against Georgia, but then you see him go up against a rival at home against Michigan and he falls apart, He's got the arm, he's got the accuracy, he has the tools that you need to be a good NFL quarterback, but I'm just not sure that he really has the personality to be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. On paper, he looks like he could pan out to be, a good prospect and a good NFL quarterback. But, when I'm comparing him to Bryce Young, I think that Young has everything that you need to be a successful NFL quarterback. And with CJ Stroud, I see him as a little bit more raw and a little bit more risky, even though he's got that prototypical size.
Well, from what I've seen of Stroud, I just think he's like just a pure fluid passer, like it looks effortless when he throws. And I know he doesn't have like the gunslinger arm, like the big arm strength, like, like a Levis, but I think he's got a better arm than people give him credit for. Because I think a lot of the fluid of his arm motion, maybe people don't think he's throwing as hard as he actually is. I haven't checked the miles per hour like they were talking the other day, but I mean, yeah. So I'm big on Stroud. He's my number one. I like pocket passing accurate quarterbacks, and if you're looking for accuracy. And if you look for a guy who's going to, not be careless with the ball, and Stroud's your guy, right?
Yeah, I hear you. And I mean, I'm not saying like you're super far off. Like everybody has different evaluations of these guys, but I could see him being, a good NFL quarterback. But I just personally think Bryce Young is going to be I think he'll be a better NFL quarterback. And in terms of fantasy purposes, I think that he'll be, a little bit more of a dual threat guy. I think that he's going to have to move around in the pocket and, escape pressure sometimes because he doesn't have that height. Then, CJ Stroud, if he's just hanging in the pocket, going through his reads and delivering some strikes, then he's not going to have that rushing potential. And that's become such a valuable piece of quarterbacks in fantasy football is that ability to run. So, I mean, I think that he has a little bit more work to do when it comes to revamping his game than Bryce Young when it comes to running the football. So anything else that you got to say about him,
I
Ross?
don't know, like you don't have to like be a Justin Fields, Randall Cunningham type,
No, I know.
all
I know.
runner to be a fantasy quarterback. Like Patrick Mahomes, he doesn't run a lot. He's probably like top fantasy quarterback you could have, right?
Well, yeah, if you
I
can
don't-
have
I don't
Like
think
a
CJ
lot of what I
Stroud's
hear
Patrick
about
Mahomes.
Stroud is the same stuff I heard about Herbert coming out, and I was big on Justin too, like, and look at what he's top quarterback for fantasy and in the league.
Well, I'm talking about like, I mean, Mahomes can run, and so can Joe Burrow. And then you look at like Josh Allen and Trevor Lawrence and Justin Herbert, like all those guys can run. Kyler Murray, like, and then I'm not
they
talking
don't run
just like
Murray
Kyler
and
Lam-
Fields.
No,
He
they
hurts.
don't.
Like they don't run like that. That they're not like teams aren't game planning because of a threat of a run from them.
But then on the
That's
other
why when they
hand,
do run, it's kind of surprising. Like, oh, look at that run. That was great. And then you got Chris Collinsworth going crazy because Patrick Mahomes just ran for 25 yards when like, nobody was even near him. So
yeah, but CJ Stroud hasn't really proved that he can do that in college, and Bryce Young has. Like I'm saying, like CJ Stroud, like Jared Goff's not running the ball. Jimmy G, Ryan Tannehill, they're not really running the ball. CJ Stroud is kind of in that same bucket, I think. When you look at Bryce Young, he can do it. He's not only a great passer, but he can also run the ball if needed. He might not be like Lamar Jackson or Justin Fields, but he's in that second tier guys like a Kyler or a Russell Wilson or a Trevor Lawrence kind of type, even though they're not maybe the same body type. He could still run and has, maybe he'll get you an extra, 3-4 points a game just from like the 30, 40 yards rushing when CJ Stroud won't have that.
Yeah, for
That's
me,
all
if we're
I mean.
talking fantasy, I think with a pure pocket passer, not just CJ Stroud, I think the hit rate needs to be they need to be really good to be a fantasy contributor. But when you're talking about these mobile quarterbacks, run first quarterbacks, I suppose, then they don't need to be good. Like Justin Fields, he was a great for fantasy, but he wasn't really good on the field. So if you get
Exactly.
like 2, maybe 3 years before he's replaced as a quarterback, then you're going to get good production. But for these pass first quarterbacks, that you need those first 2 or 3 years, you're not going to get good production. I don't think even Trevor Lawrence was that great as a fantasy quarterback, and he's supposed to be really good. So you're looking at someone needing to be Patrick Mahomes, needing to be Justin Herbert to be properly fantasy relevant compared to a running quarterback who just needs to be in a starting job, good enough for that, and he'll be really good, a quarterback one in fantasy.
I mean, if we're talking like adding in the rushing ability, and we're talking like who's going to be the number one based on who could put up the most fantasy points, then why wouldn't Anthony Richardson be the number one? Because he just showed in the combine he's the most athletic quarterback out of all of them. He's like a running back throwing the ball.
He
Who
should
can
be
throw
a
the ball?
fantasy for me. I think he should be. It's just whether you balance. Is he going to start? If you can tell me, Anthony, I'm sure we'll get onto it. But if you tell me Anthony Richardson's going to start in year one, I'd be taking him 102 after Bijan. But he'll be my top quarterback for sure.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Yeah.
I think that's the thing. These two guys that we talked about, Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, I think they have the potential to be a day one starter. When you look at a Will Levis or an Anthony Richardson, who is a little bit more raw, that might have a higher ceiling, they're going to need some time, at least, a couple games, half a season maybe, before a team will feel comfortable rolling them out as their starter. So, yeah, I mean, obviously Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, I think that those are the two most obvious guys that are going to probably be going like 1 and 2 when all is said and done. And, there's pros and cons to each of them. It just really depends on how other NFL teams evaluate those guys. So we're running out of time here on this recording. So let's take a quick break and we will be back to talk about Will Levis and Anthony Richardson. And we are back after that short hiatus. Let's jump right into it. We got Will Levis out of Kentucky up next. He's 23 years old, a senior, so a little bit more of an elderly gentleman, but he's going to be 24 in June. Stands 6'3", 232 pounds, and 10 5/8 inch hands. So we got a big boy we're talking about here. He started his college career playing for Penn State, wasn't able to start there, but he's been the starter for Kentucky for the past 2 years. Just like Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, he had a much better 2021 season, but really did not have a whole lot to work with this past 2022 season, but still had a respectable season, 65% completion, 2,400 yards, 19 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. He also had a negative 107 rushing yards in 2022, but he had a really good year in 2021 running the ball. I think he had 9 touchdowns, couple hundred yards, but definitely has some good athleticism. I think that he has a little bit of a swagger that you don't really see out of Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. And I kind of like that in my quarterbacks. You know, you'll have like your Johnny Manziels and your Baker Mayfields here and there who kind of have that attitude, but for some reason he just kind of hits a little differently for me. And I've really been a fan of Will Levis ever since last year. I saw the season that he had in 2021, and you know, obviously it was a little disappointing this year. He puts mayo in his coffee. That's the most interesting thing that I know about him, which I have tried, and it's actually not that bad. You would think it would just be like garbage, but you can barely even taste it. So maybe he's onto something with that. What do you guys think of Will?
So you're going to ask what I think of mayo and coffee, but I'll stick to the quarterback. So
Well, give it a
yeah, I think
try.
that
Don't knock it before you try it.
you said you can't taste it. So what's the point in it being in there?
It's just like a cream, basically.
Right, okay.
If
But
you're
I'm
out
not
of
going to
milk or
try it.
something, mayo doesn't expire like milk does or cream. So if you're in a pinch,
Right,
just toss some mayo in there.
there you go. I'll think of that next time. Next time I'm stranded with no cream. Um, so I think everyone knows there's been a lot of talk about Will Levis, and he's got the massive arm. That's his number one trait, and it really is an elite trait. He tries to like use it as much as possible, and sometimes he needs to take a bit off it. He just throws 100%, 100% of the time. Um, but yeah, I'm glad you mentioned his athleticism as well, because I think we didn't get to see that much this year. There's talk of him having foot injuries, and then he obviously lost his top receiver to the NFL last year, Wan'Dale Robinson, and his offensive coordinator, Liam Cohen, went to be the Rams coordinator as well. So he did have a disappointing 2022, and he wasn't able to use his athleticism. But I think that's really where he's going to shine at the next level. And he was recruited to Penn State to be, well, he was recruited to Penn State to be the quarterback, but he was used as like a red zone quarterback, so and Taysom Hill vibes. But so I think that's a really underrated part of his profile. Obviously, everyone knows about the accuracy issues, or it's widely been reported that he's got accuracy issues, and I think it's just some of the throws, some of the easy throws, where he maybe isn't 100% on some screen passes, some thrown on the run. He's not quite as good as some of the other quarterbacks in the class. And I think that's what gives me a bit of a fright, is watching him. I think he reminds me of Zach Wilson a little bit, but I think that's maybe just the blue and white uniforms. I'm getting a bit of PTSD watching that. And that's, other than the big arm, there's nothing really else in his profile, but it just scares me a little bit.
I don't know what you have to worry about with Zach Wilson. He's on my team. Speaking of that, he's on the trade block. So if anybody wants to make me an offer, let me know.
First round picks only.
Yeah. But I agree with you. I mean, he is a very polarizing prospect. Obviously, you know, he's a bigger guy. He can run the ball. And I also saw that he was a 4.0 student and he had offers from Ivy League schools, but he wanted to go and play football for a good school. And he went to Penn State, didn't work out there, but then he goes to Kentucky and he's been running this pro style offense for 2 years. So he knows, you know, the system that you're going to be taught in the NFL. He's already got 2 years of that under his belt. He killed it in the SEC in 2021, you know, put Kentucky on the map, and obviously had a little bit of a regression this year, but didn't have the best talent around him in the SEC. And he was going against some of the best teams in all of college football weekly for 2 years, and he performed pretty well. And I also saw a claim that he can apparently throw it over 80 yards, he says, allegedly. So obviously he's got a cannon for an arm. His accuracy needs some work, but it's not like he's inaccurate. I think the real thing with him is he's very raw, and there's a few things that can be cleaned up by good coaching, like inconsistent footwork and mechanics. Now, it's easier said than done because these guys have been playing quarterback their whole lives, and that's how they've been doing it their whole lives. And so to break that habit and, try new footwork or a new stance or, a different throwing motion, it's not easy to just, all of a sudden snap your fingers and then boom, everything's fixed. It takes good coaching and also, decision making too. Some of the reads, like, he obviously, I mean, he had 10 interceptions this past year, 19 touchdowns. And, that might be him trying to force it and make something happen, put the team on his back. But at the NFL, an interception can lose you a game in a pivotal moment. You can't always just put the team on your back. Like, there's only a few quarterbacks in the entire NFL that can do that can will you to win a game. And I think that he has that mentality, which is something that's good to see. But I think that he needs to iron out some of his issues as well. So that's why I don't quite have him at the top of the class. But I think that he absolutely, it wouldn't surprise me if he is the best quarterback in this class, because I think that he has a lot of the intangibles that some people just don't have and will not ever have.
It's just a quick one. I think he trusts his arm a bit too much. You talk about the interceptions. Sometimes he's just firing it in there, trying to throw between three defenders just because he knows he's got a cannon and he can throw it. And a lot of them do bounce off the receiver's hands and into a defender's arms, but that's because he's thrown it a million miles an hour at them. And I think he maybe just needs to learn to take a bit off it, let the receiver be able to catch the ball, and he'll have maybe a bit more success in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree. He's also going to have a lot better talent around him on NFL teams. I mean, even with Wan'Dale Robinson, like, he was more of like a running back receiver hybrid, like a run after the catch kind of guy. And he's going to have guys who are some of the most sure-handed players in the entire world. People who are way faster and way stronger and bigger and better catching and better route running than he's ever played with. So, with an upgrade to personnel, I think the sky's the limit with him. It really just depends on ironing out some of those issues that he's shown throughout the past couple of years he's been a starter for Kentucky.
One thing,
watching quite a lot as well. Sorry.
Watching the tape of Levis is that offensive line sucks.
Yeah.
Like, I'm trying to watch highlights because I don't get a lot of the college games. I don't have time to watch them all. So I was watching highlights and stuff of games and stuff, and he's just constantly under pressure, and I seen him a few times just on his back leg, like, throw it up, but he's got the arm strength that he's able to just throw it knowing nobody's going to catch it. It's just a throwaway, but it's over his receiver's head kind of deal, I think that affects a lot of the accuracy issues. He's definitely a project that he's not gonna. I don't think he can step in next year and just be a starter.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's got to get with the NFL coaching, and we got a lot to work on there, right? But he's definitely got the arm, and he's got mobility too. So he's like a project that is a very high reward if it pans out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's all.
Well,
yeah, to your point, Tyler, the sacks, he was sacked 34 times last year. Compare that to CJ Stroud, who was sacked 14, and Bryce Young, who was sacked 18 times. So, like, almost double. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I think that you got to attribute a lot of his lack of success from this 2022 season to just not having a very good team around him and trying to put that team on his back. Like I said, like, I loved him coming into this season, and it was obviously disappointing. There's no denying that. But like you said, Tyler, about him being a project, I don't know if I would really classify him as that. I think that he has the tools to be an NFL starter right off the gate, but he does have a lot of things to clean up. So, like, I would consider like Malik Willis a project. Obviously he's not going to be like a starter, like even this season. But I think that if you give Levis a training camp, a couple of weeks to, kind of get used to how the NFL operates, get used to and adapt to the speed of the game, that he could be a starter within the first couple of weeks here. I mean, if it wasn't for, Young and Stroud being as good of prospects as they are, I think that he would be in the question of being the number one pick. And I think he's more kind of fallen back into an afterthought with this Anthony Richardson hype, maybe QB4 in this class. And I think that he could be the absolute best quarterback in this entire class when all is said and done.
I just, I hope so because I like him, but it really turned me off watching him eat that banana. That was
Banana.
You haven't seen that?
No, I'm about to look it up though.
It's
With
like
the
a
skin
brown
on, skin
banana.
on.
He eats the whole thing, like all of it.
Oh no.
Like it's not the mayo thing was okay. That's kind of but this banana thing is absurd. It's just
Oh,
it
he
really-
eats the whole thing without peeling it.
yeah, and it's brown spots. There's brown spots all over that banana too.
Dude, okay, brown spots on a banana doesn't matter. Bananas are better
Exactly.
when they're browner.
Well, I
Love
know,
that,
but
Corbin.
okay, like when you peel
the
banana
skin,
and it's brown,
yeah.
that's fine. It kind of tastes good. When you eat the skin and it's brown,
Yes,
that's not fun. That's disgusting.
I'm with you. I'm not disagreeing. I would never eat a fucking banana unpeeled, but brown bananas are good, but not with the peel on.
No.
Yep.
No.
I don't even think that he likes it. Like I'm watching the video and it just looks like he's just choking it down.
No, he's just crazy.
He's just
He's
got
got a good
grit, man.
social
He doesn't
media
give a
game.
shit. Yeah.
His social media game's great. He's going to be
Yeah.
a star in this league.
He's going to
That
have
video-
Mayo sponsors and Chiquita's
no,
going to
that
sponsor him.
video has me like it just has me questioning like is there steroids involved?
Decision making.
Has he had a poor upbringing? Like, is he mentally there? Is he gonna Ryan Leaf in the locker room? Like, what is gonna happen with this guy? Like, who's that other quarterback that walked into somebody's house and was just sitting on their couch at like 3 a.m. in the morning?
Tom Brady,
Like,
wasn't it?
No.
Yeah, it
Tom
was
Brady.
Tom Brady. He went into a
Tom
neighbor's
Brady
house.
walked into the wrong house when he moved to Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
We thought it was his house. That's it, and that was during the day. That wasn't. No, there's that one quarterback, Chad. Was it Chad something?
Pennington?
Ah,
I don't know. I've
Yeah,
never heard
I
that
know
one.
before.
exactly
It was
who
a
you're talking
young
about. He was
guy.
on the
It was
Colts.
just a
Was he
couple
not on the
years ago.
Colts for a bit?
It was a couple of years ago. As a backup guy who was kind of floating around,
Chad Henne?
and then it wasn't a guy who like had a
Chad
good
Kelly.
career.
Chad Kelly. I knew he was on the
Oh,
Colts.
that might have been.
And like he just walked into somebody's house at like 3 in the morning or something. Just like out to lunch, totally blacked out, no idea what he was doing. And that's what I'm saying. Like, is this all
From
this
banana to
all this crazy
someone's house.
banana stuff? Is he too crazy? Is he? It's just it's disgusting. Anyway,
Well,
we should move on from that because that's
yeah,
gross.
I didn't know that. And now I got to recalibrate my rankings now that I know about this banana peel eating fiasco. But let's talk about the real hype quarterback of this class. It is Anthony Richardson, 21-year-old sophomore out of Florida. He's going to be 22 in May, stands 6'4". I think he was 240 pounds, wasn't he? 244
244.
pounds or something. Yeah.
244.
10.5-inch hands. I mean, the guy is just a fucking beast. He ran a 4.4 or it was a 4.44 40-yard dash. He compares himself to Lamar and Cam Newton. I think he called himself Cam Jackson in high school. So,
Yeah.
I mean, the guy is he's no doubt the most intriguing prospect. I think like a couple of weeks ago, he had like plus 10,000 odds to be the number one pick. And I'm looking at it right now, and he currently sits the second best odds to be number one behind Bryce Young at plus 300. I did smash a future on him, just like, I don't know, like $5-10 or something like that. But I had him at, I think like plus 900 to go number one overall. No, I had him at plus 3,000 to go number one overall. And now he's at plus 300. So I'm kind of hoping that maybe he does. I'll get a good payout there. But obviously, he's the true dual threat quarterback in this class. Last year, statistically, not the best, but he is considered very raw. 53% completion, 2,500 yards, 17 touchdowns, 9 picks. He also had 103 rushes for 654 yards and 9 touchdowns. And then just a one-year starter at Florida. So what do you guys think about Anthony Richardson? Because I know I have some opinions on him myself.
Yeah, he's very polarizing. You can tell me, you just tell me a good narrative, and I'll buy in either way. I think the narrative for him being a great NFL quarterback is obviously what you mentioned, the size, the weight, the speed, and he could come in and he can be like Lamar Jackson on the ground before his arm really develops, and he can sort of give himself that time to develop. He was 55% completion rate last year, but he did only play 12 games. So if I'm telling myself that he's going to be great in the NFL, I'm telling myself he's only played 12 games. We could get him into the NFL, sit him for this year, get him to develop under good coaching, and he's still got a way to go and a way to improve as a passer. And I think that is a lot of NFL teams will have that view, and they'll say we're the ones who can coach him, we can change him. He's like a lump of clay. He's more than that because he's got the elite sort of traits, the arm and the height and the mobility that you can't teach. But the stuff that we can teach, we're going to be able to do that to him. So I think some NFL teams are definitely going to talk themselves into taking Anthony Richardson very high.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's a great running back, right? So it's like, you know, he compares himself to Lamar, and when Lamar was at the combine, like I haven't heard it yet, but I'm kind of wondering if he was asked to try out it. You know, when Lamar was asked to try out as a wide receiver, he kept saying no. I'm kind of wondering if anybody asked Richardson to try out as a running back.
They learned
The guy,
Lamar. It's a bad
he's
question.
obviously a beast, right? But like the throwing ability is definitely a project. So like
Well-
I see I'm on a Detroit Lions fan club page on Facebook, and one guy had a scenario where the Lions draft Richardson, and then they just have him there working on passing for the next couple of years while they have Goff. But they have packages for Richardson, like red zone packages. And like he said, I could see it Richardson lining up in shotgun with Swift on one side and Williams on the other side, running a wildcat in the red zone. And it was just kind of like, yeah,
It's interesting.
intriguing with that
Yeah.
offensive line too. Like you're almost guaranteeing a touchdown
Mhm.
if you're in the 5 yard line. Like,
Well,
yeah.
here's my thing about him is, you know, you mentioned Lamar and how he was asked to move to running back or receiver or whatever, but Lamar is not by any means the best passer of the football. And you can tell that Anthony Richardson, I mean, like I watched the game against Utah and he just like flicks the ball 50 yards with ease, just a teardrop pass for a touchdown to his receiver. So he has no questions about his arm strength. It's all about his accuracy and his decision making. And he's only had 1 year as a starter, but I mean, he has a prototypical size. He has a cannon for an arm, and he does have that dual threat potential. And you look at guys like Justin Fields and Lamar Jackson, and they have that rushing floor. In terms of fantasy football, that is a big deal, you know, like you can get over 100 yards rushing a game with him. And then if he throws, you know, 150, 200 yards on a touchdown or two, I mean, that's enough to be a top 10 quarterback for fantasy football purposes. And then I think he's more like, you know, a Josh Allen kind of Cam Newton type. You know, Josh Allen, like his questions coming into the NFL were his accuracy, you know, if he would be able to consistently be able to put it on the money, because nobody ever questioned his arm strength. He has one of the biggest arms in the NFL, and he's athletic too. He can run the ball and he can scramble to get you 10, 15 yards or break it loose for a 30, 40 yard run. So I think he's a lot more like Josh Allen. And then Cam Newton, people have soured on him a bit just because of the past few years, how he's just fallen off. But we can't forget his MVP season when he brought the Panthers to the Super Bowl. You know, I mean, there is value in a quarterback like that. And Cam Newton, obviously, like different situation. He was the number 1 overall pick, just coming off of the national championship. And, you know, he was the starter right from day one. With Anthony Richardson, he just doesn't have that experience that you've seen from Josh Allen and from Cam Newton. So he absolutely does need to go to the right situation where he can be coached up for a year at least. And then they give him a shot. And, you know, a team like the Lions, and I don't want to, you know, project him to the Lions by any means. They could use him in like a wildcat situation at the goal line because everybody knows that Jared Goff isn't going to be running the football. And the offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson, likes to get creative and have these packages where, you can run wildcat or you could throw the ball to Penei Sewell on third down. And, you get creative with your pulls and your schemes. So I could see a team using him in year 1 or 2 right away. But the other thing that I think of is like Trey Lance. Obviously the jury's still out on him, but he was kind of like the same way, a flash in the pan, had one crazy season for a D2 school. And then COVID year happened, didn't play. And he goes number 3 overall, and it's because Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers saw that he has the tools to be a successful NFL quarterback. And now, obviously, with the injuries, never played a full healthy season, but Anthony Richardson has a different body type. He has the throwing ability and he has the rushing ability too. It's a floor. It's not even rushing potential. Like he is going to be as good, if not better, than Justin Fields or Lamar Jackson day one at quarterback. He has that ability. So I think it's just a matter of being able to go to the right situation, being able to sit for a year. But then you look at it, and a lot of these teams are so QB needy. Like, say he goes to the Raiders, top 10. They don't have anybody else there. They need somebody who can start right away. So what are they going to do? Sign a veteran to start like a Marcus Mariota for a year, and then Anthony Richardson starts in 2023. Texans have like Davis Mills, maybe they can roll the dice with it. Seahawks have Geno. I like, him going to like the Seahawks maybe, but there's other teams that need somebody to step in and be able to go like right now, like the Colts. So I don't know if he would be as good of a fit for a team like that unless they just want to kind of tank for another year just to get some high picks and give him some experience. But then you got to be worried about him, losing that mentality, being able to, depend on himself if he's just has one win on the season and he's just getting sacked 6 times a game and can't do anything throwing the ball. You got to be able to lead those guys on, and it takes time. So I think like a situation like the Lions, the Seahawks would be good for him, but realistically, I don't think that the Lions are going to take him because they do believe in Jared Goff. And a lot of beat writers and, national media are really hyping it up like he's going to be going 6 to the Lions. I just don't see it happening because we have so many other needs. And I think that everything that our front office and coaching staff has said has led you to believe that Goff is the guy. And I'm going to keep on pounding that drum until I'm proven otherwise.
Yeah, I think your Seahawks shout is a lot more realistic, and I think that would be my dream spot for Anthony Richardson. Not that I really care, but I think that'd be a really good spot for him, like you said, sitting behind Geno for a year in a good sort of organization who might have a good plan for him when they draft him, and he can develop a franchise that's got a history of developing talent no matter what position. So that's good. But yeah, he's I don't think he should be starting next year. And in terms of fantasy, like I said, if he was the go to a situation like maybe the Colts or the Raiders, and they didn't bring in a secondary sort of option to start ahead of him, he'd be the top quarterback for me. What do you guys think? You think you're going to tell me your personal rankings, because we obviously don't have it a landing spot from just yet. But would he leapfrog some other guys who are maybe going to go higher or more talented?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that he is definitely the most boomer bust guy in this entire draft. Obviously, Will Levis, he's got, a higher ceiling, lower floor as well. But I mean, you got to put him up there. I know he's getting hyped up a lot, and combine, I try to just take that with a grain of salt, as everybody knew that he had that rushing potential and the athleticism, and he has a hose for an arm before the combine happened. So, I mean, if we're getting into rankings right now, I've got to go Bryce Young 1. I'm going to put Anthony Richardson up at 2, just because that potential, like it's just mouth-watering in terms of fantasy value, and he can give you that rushing potential right away, but he might not be starting until 2024. So you might have to bench him for an entire year. And then I'm going to go Will Levis with 3, and CJ Stroud is last. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if I mean, these guys are so equal in my minds, but I think that Will Levis and Anthony Richardson just have such a higher ceiling than CJ Stroud does. I think he's just a little bit too safe of a pick. And if you're an NFL franchise and you're using a top 5 pick on a guy, why not just shoot for the stars as opposed to a guy who, you know, might be just kind of like a middle of the road, maybe crack into the top 10 at best. You know, I'd rather have a guy who has the potential to be like a Josh Allen or a Patrick Mahomes as opposed to, no offense, a Jared Goff, like a CJ Stroud, who's going to be an average to above average depending on the year. And obviously Goff, you know, was a project coming into Detroit as of 2 years ago. And with coaching, he was able to have a top 10 season and having those pieces around him. But when he doesn't have that around him, you haven't seen him be as successful. And I kind of put Stroud in that same bucket. He has to have a perfect situation for everything to pan out. And with these other guys, I think that they can make but guys around them better and that they can be successful with, you know, average talent. They don't need the best situation to find success. So for me, it goes Young, Richardson, Levis, Stroud. I know Tyler's going to be mad about that.
Well, I'm just mad that you keep, bitching on Goff. You just don't know, man. You just don't know. Anyway.
No, I love him, dude. I'm with you. I'm on the train. I love him, but he's not a Patrick Mahomes or a Josh Allen. He's got a high floor, but a low ceiling.
He's a winner. That's all that matters.
That's fine with me. Good.
Stroud is a winner. Stroud is one for me. I'm going to go Young second. And then Levis third and Richardson fourth. I just don't think the passing's there for Richardson right now. So I don't know if he'll get there. But those are my 4. I don't think you need to be able to throw an 80-yard bomb to be a top quarterback in the NFL. So I mean, Stroud has the accuracy. I like accuracy more than I like the big arm, so to say. So I go Stroud 1 because of that, the high IQ, the ball protection. He's what I would want to build my team around. So, and I still think I think he has the ability. He's athletic. He can run it if he needs, but he hasn't needed to. So nobody sees it. So. Right.
I'll jump in then with my rankings. Independent of knowing the landing spots, I think, in its very early stage, I'll caveat with that. And I think I value sort of the running ability a lot higher than anything else. So I've got Richardson at 1. I've got Levis at 2 because I think his running ability and his athleticism is going to be a real big factor at the next level. I don't think it's been reported as much as it maybe should. So from a fantasy angle, those are my 1, 2. And then after that, I'll probably take Bryce Young and then CJ Stroud, but obviously landing spot is going to be a big factor in that. If Bryce Young goes to the Texans, then and CJ Stroud maybe goes to a better situation, Panthers, maybe the Falcons, something like that, with better talent, then I'd maybe change it. But Richardson 1, Levis 2, Young 3, and Stroud 4.
Yeah, you're going real spicy with that then, Ross. You're going boomer bust.
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
No, I like it. I like it. And obviously, we don't know the landing spots yet, coaching situation. There's going to be a lot of moving pieces here. But, all these guys are kind of in the same tier there. It's very tough to kind of make these rankings because they are so close. And I'm not saying like Stroud's a bust, like don't draft him. I'm just saying that if I have to take my preferences for fantasy football, I think that, the order that I gave is going to be the best career. But I don't fault you guys for your opinions by any means. I mean, I think that with these big 4, you could ask 20 people and everyone's going to give you a different answer. I don't even know if that's mathematically possible. But.
I just want to clarify. I don't want anybody in the Rising Rookies to think that I need to go all out to get Stroud or any one of these QBs because I already have Goff and Lance and Howell. So I'm set. So I just want nobody send me stupid offers thinking that I'm going to bite.
There's a long way to go as well. Like everything's going to change by then, and I'll have Richardson at 4, and it's all going to change by the time we actually get round to the RR draft. So I'm sure of it.
Yeah, for all we know, Richardson will just go down in like the 3rd round, like Malik Willis.
Exactly.
For all you know, he
Everything's
just
gonna
goes and
change.
becomes a running back.
RB1 for me.
Maybe Richardson says, you know what, screw this QB stuff. I'm going to be a running back.
All right, we only got a couple more minutes left of this recording. You guys want to give a QB sleeper, some guy that we haven't talked about so far?
Yeah, I think I'm going to
Yeah.
steal your one, Corbin. I think that there's only 5 good quarterbacks in this draft, and the 5th is Hendon Hooker for me out of Tennessee. He's an older prospect. He's 25, but he was really productive the last couple of years in Tennessee. He was the knock on him is that he's a system quarterback, and that he was under the Josh Heupel sort of spread offense the last couple of years, and it was making him generating easy throws to wide open receivers like Jalen Hyatt. And can he go to the next level with a lot tighter windows and still be as effective? He's also coming off a torn ACL, and I think that's actually done a lot for me. Because if he was going to go in the first round, which was some people were talking about, without his injury, then that's maybe a bit rich for me. But if he's going to go in the second round, maybe third, as like a premium backup who can maybe spot fill as a starter, then I think that's the ideal sort of place for him. For me, and he's probably going to redshirt the first season based on his injury. I'm not sure about that, but I think so. And I think he's going to be in a good spot as a backup. What do you guys think? I know you like him, Corbin. Is he your sleeper? Do you have any thoughts on Hendon Hooker?
Yeah, I mean, he's without question the top 5, well, the number 5 QB in this class, in my opinion. I mean, if it wasn't for the injury, he would be right up there in the first round conversation. But, he tore his ACL, so it's unfortunate. He's a little bit older. I think he's like 25 or 26 coming into his rookie season. So I think he does have that dual threat potential. And if he recovers from his injury, he could be kind of like that Dak Prescott kind of guy, like a 3rd or 4th round pick who comes in and he's a solid starter for you. So I like Hendon Hooker. He had that big game, that win against Alabama. He's had good receivers, with Jalen Hyatt and that other guy, Cedric. I can't remember what his name is.
Yeah.
Tillman. Yeah. Cedric Tillman. But, at the same time, how much of it was their skill and how much of it was him elevating these guys, So I like Hendon Hooker a lot. Tanner McKee from Stanford. He's an older guy too. He's kind of like around that 2nd, 3rd round conversation. And then there was another guy, Jake Haener from Fresno State. Now, he killed it at the Senior Bowl. He's got like good leadership qualities. Realistically, he's probably going to be a backup, but might be a solid stash guy if like injury happens and he come out and prove himself. Could be in like a Gardner Minshew kind of guy. So Hendon Hooker is definitely my sleeper, though. I think that he's got a lot of potential and he could be a starter if everything kind of the stars align for him.
I went way off the board, mainly because, and I don't even know if it was him. I'm pretty sure I heard this guy on the Sirius XM. I was in the middle of installing a furnace, so I caught his name, but I wasn't sure if this was the same guy. But Tyson Bagent. He was very well spoken in the interview, and I liked him. He was a Division II QB. He's got a lot to work on with his mechanics, from what I've read. But
where is he from?
Shepherd,
yeah.
Tyson Bagent. Okay.
Yeah, he was just a guy. He was so confident in the interview he gave. I was like, this is the guy. This is the guy that probably destined to be a backup if anything, but he could be the guy that is the next Brock Purdy if he can fix up his mechanical issues. But that's just a sleeper, like somebody to stash, like you said, in case of an injury. And he doesn't have the mustache that Gardner Minshew has, but Yeah,
that's a deep
He's
sleeper.
fine.
AKA Tyler doesn't want to show his hand, so anybody takes his true quarterback sleeper picks.
Tyson Bagent's dad was an arm wrestling champion. Here he was, another fact for you. He's
Really?
going up my draft board.
It was the guy, yes, because he was talking with his dad, and they asked him, "Do you think you could beat your dad, or how are you at arm wrestling?" And he said, "Because of my dad, I don't do it. I think it's for douches." Basically, is what he said. Not douches, but he said it's pretty lame. But yeah, his dad was in arm wrestling. His mom was something a track and field star or something. Like, and that's one thing that I liked is he was pretty. He comes from an athletic family, and he's, you know, he's pretty athletic himself. But just mainly the confidence he was talking about himself. Really, I liked it. So
Well, that's a
he
hot
said he
take there.
could-
You heard it here first, folks.
he said he
Tyler
could throw
and
65
Tyson
to 70
Bagent.
yards.
I thought you didn't
Yeah.
care about that. It's all about accuracy.
I'm just saying he said. I mean, it is about actually. He's tall too, so he's a good looking guy. He's really cute. So
All
yeah.
right. Well, now we know how Tyler makes his picks. I'll have to go back through and rank their hotness. Maybe that's how you're ranking your guys. All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up, guys. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll have this out to you. Ross will be posting this soon. But like I said, we're going to be doing this every week until we get up to the NFL draft position by position. We'll tease you with our position for next week. We got to talk amongst each other to decide which one we're going to be doing next year. But we really do appreciate you listening. Tune in next week.
See ya.
See you later.